You know those moments when you're doing what you love in your business? Maybe it's standing on stage or creating content. Whatever it is, you're totally immersed and time just seems to slip by. This is called the flow state.
At SpeakerFlow, we're obsessed with how to get you there more often. Each week, we're joined by a new expert where we share stories, strategies, and systems to help craft a business you love. Welcome to Technically Speaking.
We did it. We are here. Brittany, holy cow.
Boom.
This has been a long time in the making. It's so good to have you on.
Thank you. It's so good to be here. Always fun to see you guys.
Yeah,
You
for
too.
sure.
You know, we are super fans of the Brittany Hodak brand for sure. So we appreciate the work that you do.
Oh, thank you. It is mutual, my friends. I feel like I'm real close to an OG with Speakerful, right? We've been friends for a while, going back to what, like
Long time.
2018, 19? How
Yeah,
long has it
18,
been?
yeah. Pre-COVID, for
19,
It's been a
sure.
while.
probably.
Yeah. The
Yeah,
before
yeah,
times.
the before times, yeah.
Good times back then.
Yeah, good for sure. Oh man, well, this is gonna be a great show. We're super excited to unpack, how to, create Superfans and, an amazing experience. And obviously, as thought leaders and small businesses, like I think some of this stuff can go missed sometimes because we kind of expect larger entities to be responsible for this type of thing. But as we all know in this room, that's certainly not the case. So we're going to be able to unpack a lot of that. Though, before we dive into the weeds, we got to talk about your background, of course. Now, you have a very decorated background. And in fact, like you've had experiences as an entrepreneur that most of us dream about. And most namely, of course, that's going on Shark Tank. So was that everything it was like cracked up to be? What was that experience like? And, how did that turn into what it is today?
Yeah, it was really fun. So when I was in college, I had an idea for a business and I didn't realize at the time it was an idea for a business. I thought it was just a product idea. And I worked for various record labels and I tried to get support behind this product. So I worked for Warner Brothers, I worked for Sony, I worked for a big entertainment agency, and I could just never really get any momentum behind this idea. Everybody was sort of like, oh, yeah, that's a good idea. Now, like, go back to your desk and do your job. We're not in the product creation business. And so after, gosh, I'd probably been out of college for like 6 or 7 years because I'd worked at like 3 different places at this point. And I was like, okay, I'm 0 for 3. Let me try to go somewhere else and see if I can bring this to life. And during that time post college, I'd worked pretty extensively with Walmart. And so the buyer at Walmart knew about this idea, believed in the idea, was 100% on board with me trying to make it happen. And when I said, okay, I guess they don't get it here either. Let me go somewhere else. She said, why don't you just start your own thing? Like, I believe in you. You've been talking about this idea for years. I'll support you. And if you can get someone to essentially hire you to do this as a contractor, just like keep the money, just, start your own business. And I'd never dreamed of being an entrepreneur, never thought about it, literally Googled how to start a business while I was on the phone with
Sure.
her, because I'd kind of always thought, if you want to do big things, you go work at a big company, kind of like you said in the intro. Like, people, I think sometimes think like, oh, you've got to work at a big company to do big things. That's how I had always thought. But I ended up starting a business and had quite a bit of success early on, crossed the $1 million revenue mark in under a year, continued to grow every single year. By our third anniversary, due in very large part to the support that we had from Walmart, we had worked with, Katy Perry and Taylor Swift and Justin Bieber and George Strait and like every big country star on the planet and so many huge consumer packaged goods brands. And because I had launched the company without any outside capital and had all the equity, we were written about a lot. And a casting director for Shark Tank had read an article in, I think it was like Forbes or Entrepreneur or somewhere. And I just got a call one day from somebody saying, hey, I read about you. Your story sounds really cool. Would you want to be on Shark Tank? And I kind of laughed and was like, well, yeah, who wouldn't want to be on Shark Tank? And he was like, no, like I'm a casting director. Like I would love for you to come be on the show. And I thought, wow, what a fun opportunity. So filmed like a little video and was fast tracked, and a couple months later was recording an episode out in LA. It was a blast. It was a lot of fun. Learned a lot about how reality TV works and all the sort of preparation that goes into it. And yeah, once that episode aired several months later, so I on the show was offered deals from 4 of the 5 sharks at a valuation that at the time was the highest valuation for a female founded company. It was like the valuation was close to $5 million. I was offered
Wow.
$750,000. So there was like all of this press that sort of snowballed from the episode. It also happened to be one of the highest viewed episodes of that season, just thanks to the TV gods. So there was like 8 million people or something that watched the segment of the episode that we were on, and so that led to all kinds of speaking gigs and consulting opportunities and other really interesting things that sort of put me on this totally new trajectory that I've been on for the past several years that I never would have thought about, which is talking and teaching and writing about customer experience and trying to take what I learned working in the entertainment industry for so many years and teach other business owners to have that same sense of, creating fandom and creating an experience that makes someone want to come back and work with you again and choose your business at the exclusion of others. So it's a little bit of that like entertainment industry pixie dust sprinkled into other, non-entertainment verticals.
Yeah, man,
So
that is
cool.
such a cool story. I feel like a little bit of jealousy, but mostly just like happiness that you're able to go and do that. So cool.
Well,
I'm,
thank you. It
do you
was a lot
think,
of fun. I learned a lot about reality TV.
I bet I'm highly curious about that too. For the purpose of keeping more or less on topic, though, I'm curious, like about the entertainment space specifically. Like, do you think that they do this customer experience or this uh, creating brand loyalty better than other industries tend to do? Like, was there something specific about entertainment that inspired you, or was it just the principles that you were able to be exposed to because that was the space you're already in?
So I would say a little bit of both. I grew up and so I grew up in a small town in Oklahoma. I always wanted to work in the entertainment industry, but my dad worked in customer service. So he was the manager of a fast food restaurant for a really long time. Then he was the customer service manager at a car dealership. And so always from either seeing him at work or hearing his stories, I was getting this sense of like you've got to put people first. Everything is about the way you treat people. You've always got to treat people well. So I think I always had that lens and that outlook, but I wanted to work in the entertainment industry. So I got my first job at a radio station when I was a teenager. I was exposed to tons of concerts and especially like festivals, like radio station festivals. And I became fascinated with why some bands would go viral. Some bands would just become the biggest acts in the world and others would just sort of fade away. And one commonality that I saw again and again and again was that these bands who were really taking off and having their careers really explode were the ones who were creating a unique experience for their fans. And they were also inviting their fans in to the experience. It was a two-way street. It wasn't just like a one-way exchange of like, we're going to, play these songs and you're going to love them. It was, we're going to take the time to like meet you at the merch booth after the show. We're going to keep you updated with everything we're doing. We actually care who you are as people. We want to hear about your stories too. We don't just want you to listen to our stories or our music. And so I started to see again and again and again, the artists who had the most success were the ones who were creating those true relationships with their fans. And because of that, their fans were saying, yes, I want to support you. You're no longer just one of like 10 bands I saw on this festival gig. You're my favorite because I now have a personal connection with you. I now have an overlap between my world and your world, my story and your story. And so I started to see that pattern happening again and again and again. And as I started my first business and began working with consumer packaged goods brands and retailers and other verticals, I saw that the exact same principles were true. The brands that made it clear to their customers that they cared about them, that they wanted to have them as customers, were the ones who gained that loyalty and who had customers that would come back again and again and tell their friends to give this brand a try.
Yeah, man.
It kind of
Seems
seems
like
logical.
right. I was gonna say like it's almost like it feels like it should be common sense, but to put it into practice is probably a completely different thing, which I mean, obviously is why you do what you do. So,
Yeah, I joke. It's like, it's not rocket science. Like, I'm basically saying treat your customers better and they will spend more
right.
money with you. Like,
Yeah.
this is
Wow. Who would have
not a
thought?
difficult concept. And yet it's so funny. I was playing around with chat GPT the other day, and I was asking questions about, like, tell me some brands with terrible customer experience, and tell me
Oh,
brands that are known for bad customer service. And it was spitting out a bunch of the sort of, common names, people or in industries like in transportation, like a lot of rental car companies, airlines, utilities companies. And I was like, it's pretty crazy that we live in a world where even AI can be like, yeah, these companies are doing a terrible job. Like, you are
yeah,
not
for
going to be treated
sure.
well at these companies.
Don't make the
Yeah.
chat GPT list, folks. That's the takeaway
Seriously.
here.
There's a
AI will ruin
bar
your
that's been
company.
set.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So okay. So you obviously entertainment did the Shark Tank thing. What was the segue between like realizing that fandom, that creating experiences was one, something you were passionate about, but two, like a gap? Like were you passionate about that from day one because of the experience you had with your father growing up, or did that come later in hindsight? Tell me about that segue between like your original, like, Shark Tank company and then moving that into being an expert in creating these experiences for people.
So I think I always had a passion for it, but I didn't really know it. Like, I
Mm.
thought my passion was for entertainment. And so what would happen, I was running my entertainment industry, or my entertainment agency, and we would have clients who I would say, okay, here's the plan, here's what we're going to do. And sometimes they would push back and say, well, no, we're not going to do that because, like, we can save this much money if we don't, or, we'll get the project done this much quicker. And I would say, well, yeah, but it's like a much weaker finished product, or the experience is going to be much worse for fans. And I was always like so personally offended when client partners wanted to put revenue above experience, because I just sort of had this mindset of, like, you owe it to your fans to make the most amazing product possible. You owe it to your fans to create this amazing experience. So I ran the business for 9 years, and over the years, that was sort of like the litmus test up front. Was I, had developed the questions of saying, like, if we are not on the same page about the customer experience being the most important outcome, and we're not putting customer centricity at the forefront of all of our decision making, we're not going to work together, because this is not going to
Mhm.
end well, because I'm going to continue to push and fight for creating, the best thing possible, because that's what fans deserve. And if you believe that, if you're aligned in that belief, then great, this is going to be an amazing project. But if you're like, no, I just want to, like, make extra money, and I've heard that you've created these amazing things for other artists, and we want to add some zeros to our bottom line too, then, like, you're not the right customer for us. And so as I got clarity on that, I realized it wasn't necessarily the entertainment industry that had been so alluring to me. It was the small subset of the entertainment industry that was doing a really amazing job creating these experiences and putting fans first. And so I went back to school. I got a grad degree in marketing and consumer behavior, and really started to understand, again, how those psychographic principles that draw us to the things that we enjoy in entertainment are exactly the same that make us attracted to other products and other brands throughout the other parts of our lives. Something that, as innate as, like, I feel like I belong, I feel like I matter to this brand or this company or this activity. And we're living in an experience economy. Experience is everything, and that's true regardless of the industry that you're in. So I think over time there was just sort of this shift of, while I still love the entertainment world, I think that this is so needed in other industries that are even more core to people's lives. Like, entertainment can feel a little bit like, oh, it's escapism. But there are so many parts of everyday life that you can't get away from, that are service-based industries that traditionally have not had, a very high bar for customer experience. So I've sort of made it my mission to eradicate the world from subpar customer experiences, because at the end of the day, if you're paying money to someone, you deserve to have a great experience.
Amen. I'm really excited to get your brain at the table with the DMV. I think that could be really nice to come out there. So
yeah. Well, and it's such an interesting time we're living in with technology and innovation. Like, some of the government agencies will probably lag behind as government tends to do, but technology and innovation are coming. And we are now living in a time where the bar is so low for new entrants in every single vertical. Like, it's so easy now to start a company and be a challenger brand that a lot is going to change over the next 15 to 20 years. And what has sort of been accepted as the norm in terms of customer experience and a lot of those sort of DMV type industries, it's going to look very different in the next 15 to 20 years because it's going to have to, right? So even though the government ones are going to lag a little bit behind, innovation is coming.
Heck yeah.
Which is great. I mean, it really is. It's a deeper focus around putting the needs of the customer first over even revenues to some degree. To your point earlier, I mean, you focus more on creating a really good customer experience, you're probably going to have increased revenues. But like for so long, the corporate world has just been focused on what the shareholders want. But for transitioning to this new world, maybe is a little bit of a dramatic way to put it, but where the companies that are the most successful are super focused on the best experience for the customers possible. It's really like, at least from my uneducated view, like one of the first times I've heard of like the consumer really getting the best end of the deal in a lot of ways, where in times past, I mean, that was just not the major focus. So it's good for all of us. We should be excited by this as people that are consumers and inspired as business owners.
Yeah. And it's really interesting when you go back and look at the stock market like a decade at a time to see some of the companies that sort of blow up and then go bust. It's, I think, finally starting to become clear to people that you can't just run your business looking at your stock price as the metric of success. Because when you're making decisions based on the quarterly reports that are going to be out in 45 or 90 days, you oftentimes are not prioritizing that customer, to your point. You're oftentimes not prioritizing your employees. And, one of the things that's become abundantly clear in this post-COVID reality is that you'll never have a better customer experience than your employee experience. Employees are such a critical part of the brand, and you absolutely can put your customers first and have incredible profits, but it has to be in that order. You can't say, profit is the core and we're going to make the right decisions for our customers so long as it is not in conflict with the bottom line. But if you put your customers at the core of what you do, they will come back, they will tell their friends, you will have higher lifetime values, you will have lower customer acquisition costs, your customer retention costs will pretty much go away because people would never dream of leaving you because they're having such an amazing experience. So all of these things work. You just have to have an executive who believes in it and sees the long-term vision and isn't, beholden to a board or shareholders saying, yeah, that's fine. But like, in order to make that investment for customers, the stock price is going to go way down for 90 days or 180 days while we invest. And I mean, we all saw this play out in December with Southwest Airlines, right? Like their huge epic meltdown because they had not invested in the technology upgrades that they needed because they were more focused on their stock price. They had a CEO who was an accountant, and now they've got a different CEO installed who sort of rightfully said, yeah, we messed up. We should have made these investments. We should have done the right thing, but we were a little bit too focused on, the dollars and cents rather than the common sense of this is something that we need to do to create a better experience.
Such a good lesson learned and relevant. That's in all of our minds right now, especially the speakers listening to this that got stuck in airports, which were near.
Yes.
So
The bus who travel
my
all the
Facebook
time.
feed was blowing up.
yeah. Oh man. So an idea that you kind of planted in my head earlier that I think is a good time to revisit is this like sense of practicality around creating this awesome customer experience. And a quote that this brought up for me, of all people, Gary Vaynerchuk, divisive figure, I realize, but he said in one of the videos one time, and he was actually referencing Taylor Swift, if I remember correctly, but he was saying that the benefit of, I think to some degree, a personal brand, but certainly a small business, is that
because you're inherently going to be more intimately involved with the end user, you have a better opportunity to set yourself apart in customer experience, since you can go the extra mile in a way that a huge corporation with lots of SOPs might not have the opportunity to. And seeing as a lot of the listeners to this show are going to be small businesses or single person businesses that, if that provides true, has that opportunity, do you find that that's an accurate assessment of what's possible for a small business?
I think that's a really accurate assessment. And, one of the things that I talk about in the book, Creating Superfans, is this idea of intentional experience design. And it's not a question of, is your customer going to have an experience or not? They're going to. The question is it an intentional one that you have thoughtfully designed and curated, or is it an accidental one or a haphazard one that is going to be better some days than others, or in some instances than others? And the real advantage that you have as a small business owner or a solopreneur is you're in control of all of that. So I always say every employee is in the experience department. Every employee has the opportunity to be the chief experience officer at some point to a customer. And a lot of big brands have been a little bit slower coming around to the recognition that your brand is not your logo. And your brand is not what you say it is. Your brand is the way your employees treat your customers, because that's what they remember. That's what they talk about. That's what they go and say online or in social media or to their friends. And so as a solopreneur or small business owner, you're in control of that much more so than a larger organization. It's just about being intentional about the experience that you want your customer to have, and also realizing that that customer journey is much longer than you might think it is. So a lot of times people think the customer journey starts the first time that you're on the phone with them or meeting them, and it concludes when your service is done. But in reality, it stretches out in both directions much further. That customer experience is starting the minute they start searching for someone who does what you do, someone who's solving the problem that they have, and it goes all the way through much past when you're not physically with them anymore, or when your service or product has concluded that sale, because they're thinking about, what did it feel like? How was it? Would I recommend this to my friend? Do I want to come back and spend money again? So engineering the totality of that customer journey in a really thoughtfully curated way is something that can absolutely catapult small business owners and solopreneurs from sort of this commodity provider mindset in the general market to a category leader, and perhaps even a category of one, based solely on what that experience is like.
Well, yeah, I mean, and to your point, right? Like, what a better way to differentiate, like to become a category of one. I mean, when you, especially like, I want every speaker to listen here. Like, what's the typical way that people engage with their clients? Wait for the phone to ring, sales call happens, deposit one, speak, deposit two, never talk to them again. Like, that is the extent of your customer journey. That's a commodity service, to your point, Brittany. You're not differentiating the way in which you deliver for your clients and stay with them beyond the point of the original sale. I mean, we see it all the time. Like, people talk like, well, what's my differentiator? And they come up with some kitschy phrase that somehow is supposed to summarize what they do. That's not the differentiator, nor is your niche. It's the process in which your people are going through and experiencing you. And you can go from a speaker of many to, a speaker of one. Am I capturing that right?
Absolutely. And I would say, your differentiator has to be a feeling. How do your
Mm.
customers feel when they work with you? And why is that feeling something that no other speaker can provide? What is your uniqueness? What is that differentiation? And how are you staying loyal to that at every single part of the customer journey,
Mm.
before the event, after the event, at the event? I mean, anybody can keep an audience engaged for 60 minutes. Maybe not anybody, but probably everybody listening to this podcast. Like, you can go up there, have some razzle dazzle pixie dust, get a standing ovation, but are you creating lasting change for the audience? And are you creating long-term value for your customer? It's crazy to me, the thought that people never talk to their clients again after an event. My clients become essentially friends. I mean, I get 100% of my business from spin and referrals. Clients who sometimes I haven't worked with in 3 years, but I've talked to them 11 times. I've added value or found solutions for them so often. They just refer me to people who are like, oh yeah, hey, Dan said you're the right person to hire. We don't even need to get on the phone. Like, what's your fee? Are you free this day? great. And then I do get on the phone with them because I want to create that amazing customer experience that happens long before the event. But by the time a referral comes in, they're already so highly qualified that I know I'm not competing with anybody else. It's not about price. It's not about, let's see if we can make this fit. It's, I want you. How much does it cost to work with you? And that's the power of being that category of one.
Yeah, for sure. Oh, I love that. I like that you summarize that as a feeling too. I haven't had that perspective about differentiation. I mean, at least I wasn't aware of it, at least. So it's nice to have a label for that feeling, for lack of a better word there. I am curious though, like you have a process, right, for creating super fans. I believe that's your super model. Can you break that down for our listeners? How do you create a super fan?
Yeah. So the number one thing, and I think this is especially relevant for speakers, I talk about in the book the fact that the biggest threat to most businesses, and this is incredibly true of small businesses, is not awareness. Like so many times speakers are like, not enough people know about who I am and how awesome I am. Like if I could just get more bureaus to talk about me, or if I could just be on more websites, or I could do more podcasts, like then everybody would know. 99% of the time, it is not an awareness problem. People know who you are. Plenty of people know. They just don't care. And the reason they don't care is because you have not given them a clear enough reason to. You don't have an awareness problem, you have an apathy problem. So the way that you overcome apathy is by connecting your story to your prospect story. How is your thing relevant to their life? How is your process going to solve their problem? And that's the first thing that you've got to figure out. So in the book, I talk about the idea of creating superfans. I say over and over again that superfans are created at the intersection of your story and every customer story. That
Mhm.
overlap, that intersection where you bust through that apathy, where you make yourself relevant to their life. You make it clear how you're solving a problem that they have. So I always say, if you want to create superfans, being great is not good enough. You've got to be super. Super is my acronym and my mnemonic for this idea of creating superfans. As you said, I call it the supermodel because it's fun. Who doesn't want to say that they
Yes.
know a supermodel, right? That they know a supermodel on an intimate level after reading this book. And super stands for start with your story, understand your customer story, personalize, exceed expectations, and repeat. And that's the magic sauce. That's what it is. If you do that, if you get really clear on your differentiator, if you understand your story, if you use that as your North Star, if you then understand your customer story so that you know so well how what you do is relevant to their needs to change their lives, then you can personalize the entire experience. You can exceed their expectations, and then repeat is all about what I know you guys love, the systems and processes to allow you to automate much of that so that it works like clockwork, so that you're freeing up more of your time for the things that can't yet be automated. And that is really the secret. Like that is how you create an amazing, intentionally designed experience that's the same for every customer again and again and again, to create that reputation as someone who lives up to all of those things that you're saying that you are.
Yeah. I think that you just drove home something that I think you were touching on earlier too, which is the nature of what you just described is that it's a process. It's a series of things that if you do repeatedly, probably keying into that R in super there, but you're gonna create super fans. And to me, that speaks to consistency. And earlier you mentioned that like for some businesses, it's sporadic. Sometimes it's an amazing customer experience and sometimes it's just not. And so I'm curious, like, I don't know if we can even prioritize this necessarily, because I'm sure it's all just so important. But like, do you find that that process itself is the thing that works, or is it the consistency behind it that's really like the differentiating factor of making it work? I guess what I'm asking is, can you do what you're saying sometimes and still be successful, or does it need to be all the time?
Well, so there's a quote that I love that I have in the book, and it's from Elizabeth Arden. And the quote is, repetition makes reputation, and reputation makes customers. And it is important to do all the time if you want to have that reputation for greatness. Somebody used this analogy the other day, which I thought it was really great. They were talking about bureaus. They were like, bureaus want to sell Coke, like Coca-Cola. I know it's going to be great every time because the formula is there. I would much rather book a really good speaker who I know is going to be really good every time than a speaker who is sometimes brilliant and other times just okay because they're, doing a lot of improv. They're doing a lot of like, I've got some bullet points and I'm going to just riff or improvise. Like they want consistency. They want Coca-Cola. I know it's going to be exactly the same every single time. And consistency is so important. I mean, think about it in your own life. Like think about yourself as a customer. If you go out to a restaurant and it's amazing, and then you go out to that same restaurant a week later and it's just okay, you're confused, right? You're like, well, which one of those was the exception and which is the rule? Are you going to roll the dice and go back a third time when you're like, oh, well, there's like a 50-50 chance I'm going to have a just okay meal? Maybe. Or maybe you're like, oh, it's a restaurant. There's 800 other restaurants in my town. I'm going to just like try another one. And so that's why that consistency is so key, because that repetition is what builds your reputation. And of course, we know that reputation is like the most important thing that we have as speakers in terms of, growing our business.